We all believe that information is going to be the most important resource in the 21st century.
Devices in the physical world, they bring a lot of inherent constraints that have to be dealt with.
You know, the Internet of Things brings tremendous promise.
People talk about the Internet of Things, and there are people who are beginning to now talk about the Web of Things.
Can we have nanoscale sensors that replicate each of these 5 human senses? And can we do this better?
I think from an architectural perspective on being able to leverage web technologies, I would recommend that people keep an eye on this new trend towards the Web of Things as well.
Imagine nanoscale sensors that can see things 1,000 times better than the human eye.
There's all these monitoring devices that people have built, but the problem I see is that they're all tied to specific portals.
But on the other hand, they tend to develop faster in silos.
It's in companies' interest to keep control over the information,
Yep.
but I think what's good for the larger population, I believe, is if everybody started following open standards and
it's important to have standards, but the question is, where do you want to have the standards and still give some flexibility to really make sure that you can adapt to different device characteristics and different information data types.
Structured data, medical history data from individuals, personalized data from gene sequencing, live data from smart sensor, from the trillions of data sensors and so on, and sorts of social networking data. The future of healthcare would be different. That's the world of Internet of Things that we live in.
How do we actually ensure that there is right amount of access available to who wants that data, and in what form do they want
give
it?
access to this data that's quick but still secure. And I mean, we have seen one example of that. Obviously, that's the iPhone and its App Store model. So understand what are simple access control policies that the user can then modify if he wants to.
We all see the excitement. But when we bring all this new excitement, we're also bringing lots of new vulnerability.
It's kind of an outlook of what is the Internet of Things when you look at existing devices and implementations that we have to go into, whether it's in energy, industrial, healthcare, transportation, consumer. And you see that explosion of social networking, like Twitter and Facebook. The explosion of Android and iOS tablets and smartphones shows us what could be. But how do we take advantage of that for this next explosion of the Internet of Things?
Steve Jobs, where he talks about how he's cracked the problem with the TV, and a lot of people are speculating that Apple's building a TV with voice-based UI. What's less clear to me is if you try to build these resource-constrained devices with voice-based UI, where would you do the voice processing?
Silicon Valley innovation and tradition of innovation can directly impact many of these.
Open source software definitely plays a part, but there's this whole new trend about open source hardware.
How do we build that developer community that can take their paradigm knowledge and help contribute to an overall Internet of Things? The 5 design characteristics that I just told you about that we came up with 12 years ago, Facebook was looking for the new Facebook Messenger application. So it's actually using MQTT.
We're facing a major challenge in how to manage all of these devices. But we haven't really cracked the nut on how to manage device discovery, configuration, life cycle of these sensors, which are going to be in the field for a long time.
Let me tell you, I'm extremely concerned. Two aspects to this Internet of Things that are going to make the matter much, much worse.
Raises very ominous questions about security.
You know, we've been talking about security of sensors, but what about actuators, right? Almost from a national security point of view, is the possibility of correlated failure. So this Internet of Things is going to grow a lot more rapidly than the regular Internet, and the people who are writing a lot of the software don't really have training or understanding about security, and the people who are using the systems don't have a model of how these things are going to fail, right? They're going to fail in ways that are completely unanticipated. So if you know, it does sound like a potential recipe for disaster.
With security certificates inside of them. Now, that's only a small part of the problem, because it immediately begs who's going to be the certificate authority.
David, I fully understand your concern, but I want to make sure that we don't miss the fact that all of the semiconductor manufacturers are trying to address this.
I just don't think that TPMs are solving the same problem. Or sealed storage to make sure that only this vulnerable software gets access to your secrets. But the software is still vulnerable, right? So if we don't have people writing robust software or engineering their systems such that most of the software is outside the trusted computing base and if it fails doesn't pose a security threat, until we're architecting our systems that way, I don't see how a TPM is really going to help.
You cannot have the same trust models or same security models across different industries, different environments, different scenarios.
We're going to run through like the same sorts of things that we've seen, where there's a kind of a tension between, A, just configuring the firewall in the first place is hard, and then B, there's a tension between functionality and security. And I'm afraid that people are going to err on the side of functionality.
Let's stick with the home because, your home is your castle, right? I want to be in control of what is happening in my home. And yet many of those sensors will be put in place by other people. And they're using information from those sensors for their own purposes. What happens when we start connecting things beyond that, sort of in your picture, Arlen, where other aggregations of the data occur? It's a little bit like what we see in the social network, where people are posting things for their friends, but it's being used in a different way. And it's creating maybe not a security problem, but a very different way of thinking about privacy.
Yeah, and so the key is to express the policy in terms of the data rather than the actions of the software.
There are going to be lots of new innovations around security, around management. New standards will emerge. I mean, we still, in the physical world, you see lots of legacy technology that's been around for 30, 50 years that you could do a much better job today if you were to replace it, but the economics isn't there to do so. And so we're stuck with the old technology. Do we risk that happening with the sensor technologies, the protocols, et cetera?
And there are lots of activities that happen in the markets that are absolutely meaningless except in the 10 seconds after they happen. How do you figure out what's important? How do you know what to keep? How do you tag data? And how do you avoid, if you're tagging data, how do you avoid the data itself becoming so large that you can't manage it?
And big data is the theory that you can look at all of this disjointed data from social networking to sensor data, and you can come up with a new revelation on that. Do you want that available? I think we've got to figure that out.
Can you do secure systems that maybe don't have resources to do public key, private key, that can only do symmetric encryption?
My position is like maybe we should give up on software.
In the organization, you're saying, okay, I've got Google Maps and they're getting data from me so they can show traffic and stuff like that. It's useful. It's kind of like having a chainsaw, right? It's a very powerful tool, but you can hurt yourself with it too.
Because there's so much radio frequency noise in the environment. And it doesn't matter how much you've safety certified the devices unless you figure out a way to have secure data pathways through that noise. So, I would argue for a lot more testing in such noisy environments.
And I'm a big believer that there's going to have to be various forms of network virtualization so you can take advantage of the specific lower level pieces.
These people don't care about security. All they care about is regulatory compliance.
There's going to be a lot of evolution over the next several years.
Connected devices, machine to machine, it's all one and the same. It's things out there that are already wired or not connected at all today that are becoming wireless enabled. This has been around for a long, long time. It's not really new. It's just now you have the carriers going full bore after this because of Alzheimer's patients and being able to track them and set up a geofence and know where they are, be able to provide push buttons.
How do you connect the various enterprise business applications? Whether you look at it from a manufacturing perspective, supply chains, plant maintenance, customer intelligence.
For most products, very little is done in the brain, and it's almost all responses that are local. So we're seeing tremendous opportunities to sort of drive almost the embedded systems, operating system that are in these devices, and take a lot of those complexity and actually drive it to the cloud to make the companies that are building these products tremendously more competitive.
One of the trends that we're seeing are a lot of the operators have been opening up their APIs so people can easily integrate.
When you're talking about things, there's always somebody out there that's making that thing. So one of the most important perspectives is what the industry looks like to that guy that makes sump pumps.
As the channels of commerce are increasing.
Right now, the applications that are being addressed are the very top of the pyramid, these really high-value applications. And one of the questions about that is if we're going to get to 30 billion devices, how do we start to get to that base of that pyramid? And part of that has to be a pretty dramatic falling in the costs of these systems.
I think there's a tremendous opportunity for disposable devices with low bit rates at low cost.
From the enterprise side, obviously what excites us is the whole sense and respond type of environment.
MDM is real, it's not in the future.
We are actively recruiting everybody in this room to participate in this Internet of Things and an open source and help us define it and get it out there.
This is a real phenomenon, and I will just tell you this, either you're going to deploy it to create operational efficiencies in your business, or you're building a product that's going to have connectivity in it, and you'll generate revenue as a result of it. And if you're not, your competition probably is. It is here, it is now. The funnel's full, and it's not a fad that's going to go away anytime soon.
So we also believe, and we are seeing the trend that everything will be connected. Your school, your hospital, your government, your car, everything will be connected.
This isn't going to come together without an ecosystem. You know, connectivity is one part, but also getting all the elastic cloud computing and the service delivery platforms are going to be necessary to help kind of this revolution take place. So that's what's giving us smiles right now.
If you're not doing this, your competitors are. We're seeing, got a pretty good view across pretty much every SIC code, and you know, it's existing companies and startup companies. So it's a great opportunity. So I would try to take advantage of it.